one of the things that is very interesting with Pinot is you're not talking average latency, you're talking P99 latency, right? So if 100 users are, if you're running, if you're 100 users, a million users, 250 million users are using the application, 99 percentile of them will get the response back in milliseconds. I always, whenever I talk to the Blinkit team, Zomato team, the amount of innovation that those guys are doing is incredible. And this is actually one scenario where data actually provided the business to explore, right? I was talking to them last week, and they basically told me that they collect everything. Whether somebody moves a box from one location to another location, it goes from one rack down to the floor, or it goes to another rack. Every piece of information is collected and processed and helps in decision making, right?
First of all, welcome to the podcast. And
Thank you.
we have had a chance to meet last week. It was great talking to you. And in this podcast, we'll try to talk about you, about StarTree, about Apache Pinot, and the partnership that we're starting on, and how we
Mm-hmm.
see it going from here. So you have had an incredible journey from IIT Madras to working at Oracle, and now leading the
Correct.
product at StarTree. So just help us get started about what got you started into databases and then moving on to real-time analytics.
Correct. Yeah. So my journey into database is actually, it happened in a kind of a circular way. After I left my undergrad, I did my master's in Michigan State, and I was actually doing a lot of work on statistics. I did not do anything about databases. My first job was in benchmarking and server performance. And then
Mm-hmm.
I joined AMD. AMD, that was a 10-year journey. Worked on several processors. Opteron was one of the processors that I was involved with, pretty much from beginning to the end, in various capacities. And after that, I wanted to kind of go up the stack, and the because of some relationships I had with people at AMD, I spoke to Delphix, and then I joined Delphix. Delphix is actually a database virtualization platform, right? It was kind of ahead of its technology back then. And the key database that Delphix virtualized at that time was Oracle. And that's kind of was my first introduction to databases, after whatever you study about databases in school, right?
Right.
And that was an incredible journey. Delphix had some of the smartest people I had worked with. Adam Leventhal was my boss. Taught me incredible amount about storage, right? How do you evaluate storage performance, things like that, and that's when I realized how important storage performance is for databases. And then journey was with incredible individuals that I came across, that I learned from. That's one of the things that I do, is actually I learn from the people that I talk to, that I work with. That's how I learn, and that's kind of how I learned about databases, right? So started with Delphix, that was Oracle. Then I met Tarun and Prasanjit. They were the co-founders of Datos, and I switched to Datos. Datos was kind of a shift, still databases, but a shift. NoSQL databases. There, we were trying to build a platform that would back up NoSQL, eventually consistent databases, right? So that tagline was a consistent backup for an eventually consistent databases, right? So that was my introduction to Cassandra and MongoDB. They were
Interesting.
uh, yeah, distributed databases, eventually consistent databases, and very different from Oracle, right? From the Oracle database world that I was at. After that, I went to Oracle, went to the home base,
Yeah.
and Oracle, I did not actually work on databases. As a matter of fact, I was actually working on observability. I was a PM in the Oracle Management Cloud, and worked horizontally across different observability solution, log analytics, APM, different solutions, mainly focusing on how do we build a horizontal solution that will work for Oracle applications, right? But mainly observability. After that, I met with Kishore, back into databases, Apache Pinot. We talked very early on. The company had just been incorporated at that time. So very early on, spoke to Kishore, and from there, my journey in Apache Pinot had started. Right, open source database, incredibly efficient, very different paradigm, and I'm sure we'll get into the details of Pinot. So that's kind
Yeah.
of my journey with databases.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's like you have actually gone in a circle from different. You have had a look at databases from different angles, and even coming from the storage to databases, then NoSQL, then back to Oracle, and now this. It's a pretty eventful journey.
Thank you, thank you.
Right. So you left India, I believe, close to the beginning of the millennium, and since then you have been frequenting the country. How do you see the technical landscape change in these past 20, 25 years? And what do you think right now is really something that a lot of people are trying to work on, and they are trying to leverage as a technology which would make lives simpler and easier for people to make technology use for them at scale?
Yeah, yeah. Lot has changed. Obviously, I left India in '99, and to do my masters. I was here in Madras at that time, and then left for masters. Lots of things have changed. Obviously, uh, technology and innovation in technology has exploded over the past 20-25 years, but in kind of different set of waves, right? Back then, it was mainly a services industry. I'm sure you remember it was, essentially considered, hey, it- you know, let's offload these services, right? There are these companies, GSIs, uh, offload certain small projects to them, upload large projects to them, but essentially services, not product. Over the last 10-15 years, I've seen an incredible growth in actual product innovation, right?
Correct.
Everything. I mean, I think Zoho was the one that kind of kickstarted that, technology revolution, in my view, right? Obviously, everybody has a different
Yeah.
sense of who started this and how it got started. But, in my view, Sridhar and what they did with Zoho, that was incredible, right? Being able to build a, ground up solution that is not just built for India, but built globally, right? That any company can use. Right. That was, an incredible beginning. And after that, tons and tons of innovation, tons and tons of products have come in. Most recently, the thing that kind of excites me and really amazes me is the amount of innovation that is taking place in the finance industry, in the payments industry, with UPI and the democratization of payment platforms and the payment processes that has happened in India. Incredible amounts of innovation is happening there, in terms of the types of companies that are coming up, the types of solutions that are being built, the types of technologies that are being adopted that I'm sure will be relevant globally, right? So yeah, so incredibly amazing innovation has started in India over the last 20 years. Lots of things have changed.
So true. Uh, and in a way, what the government has been trying, and with the various entities and people working along with the government, this digital public infrastructure, DPI stack that they keep talking about. I think in a way, the challenges and the opportunities to India are very unique, because even though the market is still not as big as a US or a China, but the scales and the volumes that exist, and everything that needs to be made available in real time, whether it is a transaction in the case of UPI, or whether it is distribution of a public service in case of other infrastructure. The value of providing that data and that analytics in real time, I think that's been something that's been growing like a wildfire in these past 10-15 years. So that's
Yes.
where I think again a technology like Pinot really shines and really comes up as a very good solution to a lot of problems that have existed. So coming from traditional databases to such a technology, to such a stack, how do you see that whole paradigm change and the adoption of a technology like Pinot and the prominence of a technology like Pinot?
Right. So this is something that I've been thinking about. Every time I come to India, I come across this challenge, which is, so India naturally has a scale, right? I was talking about this to someone a couple of days ago also, right? If you build a product, you get reasonable amount of adoption, you already have millions of users, right?
Yes.
And so that's not the case for example, a product that you built tailored for the US market, right? So the need for that scale naturally comes for the products that are built here, right? It's built for, high throughput user facing analytics.
All right. So I think we talked in brief about your journey from Oracle to modern databases to Pinot. So then when we come to Apache Pinot, what really was the problem that Pinot was invented to solve? Can you take us
Correct.
through that?
Yeah, so it's funny actually. Pinot is solved. The original use case that Pinot was created to solve is something that pretty much every professional in the world, I can easily say, uses even today, right? So if you think about LinkedIn, where Pinot was created, there is a very interesting application that LinkedIn provides, which is called Who Viewed My Profile,
Yeah.
right? Every
Yes.
professional, in the technology space or not, uh, at some point in the week, you'll go there and see who would my profile, right? And
Yeah.
now, as LinkedIn adoption was growing, the system that was actually backing this use case was getting larger and larger. If memory serves, that system was using almost 1,000 to 1,200 nodes or something like that, right? And what this particular use case did is it gamified LinkedIn, right? Gamified LinkedIn and started getting people more engaged, right? People started coming back to LinkedIn because, natural curiosity, right? Hey, I want to, professional curiosity, natural curiosity. So as the adoption grew, as the active users grew, it was this particular use case was driving the traffic, but it was also becoming a big drain. It wasn't scaling. The infrastructure that was behind this technology, behind this use case, was not scaling. That's when Apache Pinot was created as a system that can support this fundamental paradigm shift, which is very high throughput queries, very, very high throughput queries, and very, very low latency, right? One of the things that is very interesting with Pinot is you're not talking average latency, you're talking P99 latency, right? So if 100 users are, if you're running, if you're 100 users, a million users, 250 million users are using the application, 99 percentile of them will get the response back in milliseconds, right? It's not enough if 50% of them. Average latency is not good enough here. It has to be 99 percentile latency, right? Now, that's kind of how Pinot got started, right? And with the innovation of Kafka, where streaming data was coming in, uh, uh, Pinot became, and this famously, Pinot is what happens after Kafka, right? So
Yeah.
with the data coming in, Pinot became the vehicle where you can draw that information out in a real-time streaming manner and give it back to the users, right? So that's
Mm.
kind of who viewed my profile, that is part of LinkedIn, was the first use case that Pinot was created for, and is still one of the strongest, most popular Pinot use cases, I would say, by far.
Wonderful. Yeah. All right. And then, so see, when we talk about real-time analytics, we've seen that people have had some, people come up with some misconceptions that they have either heard or they have maybe faced. So what are those, some of the most prominent ones that you would like to clear up and particularly as regards Pinot.
Right. So one thing that I've noticed yesterday, we were at Current in Bangalore. Even in this day and age, I've had conversations where, do I really need real time? Right. That's the first misconception is, do I need real time? And this is from the traditional view of analytics, which is batch oriented and which is internal facing. Right. So there is, if you think about the four quadrants that we'd like to see the analytics world, you have the external facing analytics and the internal facing analytics, and the streaming real-time analytics and the batch, analytics, right? Now, Pinot obviously does play very well in the real-time space when you have, and in the external space, right? So external analytics, obviously that's where you need high throughput, low latency, all of those things. But the thing with real-time analytics, and yesterday I was having a conversation with someone who's saying that, hey, no, we don't need real time yet. We'll get there, but we don't need it. The challenge, that's one misconception that I think we should definitely kind of unravel, which is the opportunity cost of not using is way higher than actually saying that, hey, no, batch is enough for me. Right? Your the value that you can provide to your users is incredibly high when you use this. The second
Yes.
thing I would say is real time and streaming. When you are trying to look at different solutions that offer real time and streaming, you want to really pay attention to whether when they say real time, it is real time or not. When you say streaming, it is streaming or not. A lot of times you can micro batch data and it looks real time, but it will not really scale, right? It's not really near real time, right? So that's another thing that is important. Another notion that I've heard is, I don't have the scale, right? Do I really need Pinot because I don't have the scale? That's something that I've seen. The challenge is, do you want scale or not, right? Do you want millions of users or you don't, right? If you want millions of users, you have to build for millions of users. You can't say that I will build for millions of users when I get millions. So it kind of becomes a vicious circle, right? You're never going to get those users if the
Yes.
100 users you have are not getting the experience that they deserve,
Yes.
right? So that's the other thing is, you have to build for it, you have to want it, and you have to build for it. You have to go after that, right? So
Wonderful. I think, yeah, those are some very frequently heard, and we also, when we talk to customers, I think those are the most frequently heard and points that we come across. So thanks for clearing those up. Now, we know that in India, Blinkit is one of your big users. And what kind of real time analytics problems does Pinot solve for them? Can you help us understand that a little better?
yeah, Blinkit, actually, we started our journey with Blinkit when they were called Grofers, right? And back then they were doing 1 hour delivery in only 4 metros, if I remember correctly, right? And they from there went to 10-minute delivery, and then they went to 10-minute delivery only in 4 metros. And then now I think they're all over India. They're able to do this. And this is, I been a very incredible, very, very good journey with them. One thing that I always, whenever I talk to the Blinkit team, Zomato team, the amount of innovation that those guys are doing is incredible. And this is actually one scenario where data actually provided the business to explode, right? I was talking to them last week, and they basically told me that they collect everything, whether somebody moves a box from one location to another location, it goes from one rack down to the floor, or it goes to another rack. Every piece of information is collected and processed and helps in decision making, right? What is getting shipped, how fast things are getting shipped, how much is the delay from the step to here. All of this information is getting collected and it is analyzed in real time. And Pinot, I'm very grateful to say that Pinot has become an integral part of this entire supply chain, right? Um, they have these internal reports that are used by executives, by the field engineering field teams, field managers. I'm not sure what they're called, but essentially hundreds of users are looking at these things to make sure that the fulfillment centers are running efficiently, right? There are no gaps, there are no delays. All of these things are running efficiently and smoothly, and anything that changes within seconds, they are informed and they are taking corrective action. That real-time decision making is being unlocked because they're able to analyze this and process this information and show those alerts and bubble those things up in within seconds, because this is literally within 10 minutes, so every second counts here, right? So yeah, it's
That's
been an incredible journey. And just to complete my thought, the innovation that those guys are doing is also fantastic. I mean, the team there, incredible innovation.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with you, because in India, this whole 10 delivery segment, or quick commerce as they call it now, the segment itself is not more than a few years old, and but the way it has proliferated, the way it has grown is tremendous, to the extent that it is now directly competing the biggies of e-commerce, which was the way they disrupted the whole commerce market and to took people to e-commerce. Now they are being everybody is being forced. All these e-commerce guys are now getting into quick commerce. So all the biggies and in India, then anything you do it at scale. Even a small locality has so many people, such a dense population staying within that small distance, that covering the number of stores and then the number of people that one such store can cover is incredibly high. And in that regard, when you think about the importance of data in real time, the importance of data in instantaneously, that's amazing. That's an really incredible scale and speed that we are talking about.
Mhm.
And if those are use cases there, if a company can rely on a technology, I think there is no bigger use case in today's India that we can talk about. And then similarly, the same then passes on to other industries as well. That in India, wherever we go, whether we talk to a quick commerce, e-commerce company, or we talk to a fintech, or we talk to a exchange, or we talk to any of these companies, everybody is innovating and everybody is delivering volumes at scale at a really crazy speed. The latency that people talk about, they are not even talking about in minutes, they're talking about seconds, milliseconds, and microseconds. So those are some wonderful use cases I believe I see for any technology if it's able to solve them. And all right, so then coming back to Pinot, we know that Blinkit is one of the biggest use cases. But apart from that, if we talk about generally how the market is adopting Blinkit, where do you see the biggest set of consumers coming from? Is it logistics, commerce,
Yeah.
fintech,
So
retail?
logistics has been the bread and butter use case for Pinot. Pinot has been the go-to solution for pretty much every logistics giant in the world. From food delivery companies across the world, use rely on Apache Pinot, DoorDash, Uber, Zomato here, lots of other companies, Grubhub, Just Eats, lots of leaders in the logistics industry. UPS, for example, uses Pinot. So all of these logistics companies obviously rely on Pinot. And the second big one that we've started seeing a huge amount of adoption in the last few years is fintech, right? Started with Stripe and Razorpay, um, adopting Pinot for really solving their scale problem, right? Stripe, obviously, they have petabytes of data that needs to be queried in milliseconds, right? Razorpay uses Pinot for their merchant dashboards. Millions of transactions that are going through the Razorpay platform, uh, and hundreds of thousands of merchants get a real-time view of how their daily transaction volume is going, what are the credits, what is getting debited, things like that, what is their backlog, things like that. So fintech. Now after that, the traditional banking, FSI, has started. Though we had good adoption early on with JP Morgan Chase and Citibank, now we are seeing some of the new age banks and traditional banks leveraging Pinot And the one key use case that I've seen, common across these things, obviously every bank is using it for different types of use cases. But one that I've seen that resonates across all the banking sector is the risk and fraud detection, right? That's one where you want to, within seconds of a transaction, identify the whether a transaction has any risk associated with it. What is the level of risk associated with a given transaction, right? That is, standard analytics query, but given the volume that these companies, these banks are processing, that standard query becomes very hard to support because now you're running millions of those, and you want a response for every one of those within milliseconds, so that you can take corrective action on that transaction, right? And what other than Pinot would be the solution to solve that problem, right? It started with JP Morgan Chase, Citibank adopted it. There are banks in one of the largest banks in Brazil, South America, has adopted it. Now, banks in India are also started looking at Pinot for solving this problem. Razorpay has also used this Pinot for addressing this problem. So that's another thing. Fintech, finance, FSI industry, that's another area that we have seen huge strides being made. And the third one is the retail, right? In the retail space, we've also seen very good adoption for Pinot, right? So yeah, lots of retail giants are already using Pinot, are looking at Pinot also.
Terrific. Terrific. All right. We talked about the technology, and we would also like to talk a little bit about the more technical stuff behind the technology for the technical folks we hope will watch us talk. So, if we break down the architecture of Pinot, how does this columnar storage model differ from the traditional row-based databases?
Correct. Yeah, I think that's one thing that I have observed over the last few years, right? Whether you need to you need an OLAP system in your stack or not, right? Obviously, once you are a mature enough organization, you have a data engineering team, data platform team, and you are investing in your data infrastructure, then you'll absolutely understand the nuances of why you need OLAP and why you need OLTP and when you need to start OLAP. But what I would like to take this opportunity to clarify is, so there are a lot of startups that I have spoken to, a lot of mid-market companies where, in fact, yesterday I spoke to a gentleman who said that fairly decent-sized company who said that we run all of our user analytics on our Postgres system, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that. The OLTP databases, Oracle, Postgres, they're incredibly well designed. They can handle aggregation queries. But how much efficiency you want to draw from running those aggregate queries? That's the question, right? If you want to do a transaction where you're saying, hey, let's update the balance in your account, OLTP database is fantastic for that, right? Let's update the address of this person. Let's update the shipping cost for this particular transaction. In databases are incredible for that. But if you want to then go and ask the question of what is the monthly average of this user for the last 6 years, for the last 2 years, right? Then you can absolutely run that query on your OLTP system. But do you really want to, right? What happens is as you get started, you have an OLTP system in your background, but at some point you are running more analytics queries. So row-based systems are built to answer point queries, right? What is the balance for this particular account ID for this particular user in this particular account, right? What is the address of this user? Things like that, right? Column-based storage, column-based databases are built to answer questions like what is the monthly average on this particular account, right? So you are doing aggregation queries, right? Now, instead of looking at, for the first one, all you need to do is look at one row and answer the question. For the second one, you have to look at a million rows, but you're only looking at one column in those million rows. That is why going to a columnar storage, it makes it easy Because like I said early on, databases, it's all about how efficiently you use storage, how efficiently you use compute. Regardless of it's an OLTP database, OLAP database, Cassandra, MongoDB, Oracle, Postgres, Pinot, does not matter. It's really about how efficiently you're using your disk and compute. Now, to answer the second question, which is monthly average, um, if you put all the monthly account balances in a single column and lay it out on disk one after the other, then answering that question becomes much easier because you're basically doing sequential IO and doing the computation. Obviously, Pinot doesn't do that. Pinot does a lot more advanced capabilities in order to answer that particular question. That's where
Mm.
the speed and efficiency comes from. But that kind of gives you an idea of columnar versus row-based databases versus columnar databases, right? And when you need to use what. So,
Fantastic. Another thing, whenever we talk about real-time analytics, there will always be a comparison between Elastic and Pinot. So one, how does that work? Where do you see the use cases and the pros and cons for both the technologies? And number two, anything where if you're giving a low latency result, that also means that you're indexing data in real time and you're indexing it well. So how does that work for Pinot, and how does it compare vis-a-vis Elastic?
right. So um, what I've seen over the last 5 years is Elastic is fantastic technology, easy to adopt, and seen incredible usage and adoption across various verticals, various industries globally. And typically, it is brought into your data stack for serving search, right? Elasticsearch. Now, and it is an incredible technology if all you're doing is searching through different things, right? But what happens is now that the data is there, you start running aggregation queries on top of your Elasticsearch database, right? Instead of saying, give me all the users who fit this description, you say, give me the average age of users who fit this description, right? The difference is in the first one, you're just doing a search, that's okay. But in the second one, you're searching through those numbers, but you're also doing an aggregation on top of those numbers, right? Now, that is where the need for a system that is built for doing aggregated queries comes into play, right? It's all about efficiency. You can solve this problem using Elasticsearch, but how much infrastructure you want to spend to answer that question. In case of Pinot, because we have all these indexes, StarTree index, for example, you can answer that question by using very minimal resources. The reason the resources you use to answer that question is important is you're going to ask that question a million times, right? So if you use 10% of CPU to answer that question, now if you run the query a million times, that's a lot of storage and compute that you're using that is going to cost money, right? It's really about that. Bottom line, it's really about, you can use Elasticsearch to answer these questions. It's just that how much infrastructure you want to spend to answer these questions, right? The right tool for the job is essentially to, you're going to save time, you're going to save resources, and you're going to save money.
Uh, then how does Pinot handle distributed storage and compute to maintain scalability and high availability?
So Pinot is fundamentally a distributed system. It is designed for high availability. uh, you know all the technology, all the patterns that are used, multiple replication, distributed system, all of those technologies are played, and that's not very different between most distributed systems, right? You're baking in resiliency, you're baking in redundancy in the system. Now, the thing that makes Pinot really stand out in addressing scale and in addressing making sure that the latency is met is lot of small innovations that Pinot has done to answer a given question, right? One of the things that Pinot does very well is let me step back, right? So distributed systems, distributed databases, most of them, the way they are trying to answer a query is by parallelizing the data processing required to answer the query, right? So if you ask for, hey, what is the average balance, like I talked about, right? What is the average monthly balance? And you have million rows, you want to break that down into, 10 or 100 or 1,000 different sub-threads, and then compute the data in all those threads, and then join the data, right? Now, what Pinot does is it's not trying to parallelize the work, it's trying to avoid the work completely, right? The fundamental paradigm is that whatever work you need to do to answer a question, try to pre-compute that or try to be efficient so that you don't have to compute that when the query is asked, right? So StarTree index, for example, makes it easy to answer that question without actually doing the full computation at the time the question is asked, right? So that's one technology, which is all the indexes that are used by Pinot to answer the query that make Pinot, different. The second thing is when a query comes, this is kind of a second, third level of detail is when you're trying to answer a question, one of the things that is important for distributed systems is to figure out very quickly what is the thing that you can avoid, right? So if you have a terabyte of data and somebody is asking a question, if you can very quickly say that, hey, no, I don't have to look at this 600 gigabytes of data on this side because the question is, the answer is in this other set, then you suddenly reduce the problem space by 60%, right? And then you can say from these 400 gigabytes, I only need to look at this one segment. Then you reduce the problem set by another 90%. Right. So that's kind of pruning is what is called, and Pinot does pruning at various levels. That's another thing that is an innovation in Pinot that allows Pinot to be able to answer these queries in that very, very efficient manner.
That's cool. That's really good to hear. And now, when we look at Pinot and we look at StarTree, so how does StarTree fit into the adoption, into the further marketing of Pinot, and being behind Pinot, so that the enterprises get the confidence that not only is the technology stable and scalable and highly performant, but at the same time there is also a team of highly skilled individuals, the people who will back it up, and they'll make sure that the technology continues to excel by the way of more development
Correct.
on
Correct.
it, building engineering capabilities on it, and giving the product support. So how does
Yeah.
that alignment happen, and what are those some really important values or features and capabilities that StarTree brings to Pin?
Right. So StarTree, as you know, was started by the company, by the, sorry, StarTree was started by the people who created Pinot. So there is a fundamental open source ethos for StarTree as well. And I can safely say 80-90% of the innovation that we do, we actually push it back to open source, because the fundamental goal for us is also to make sure that Apache Pinot remains to be the fastest, most efficient real-time analytics database out there, right? A lot of innovation goes back to Pinot. StarTree also is involved in helping all these large companies adopt Apache Pinot, right? We work with, companies large and small. One of the things that I hear always is the Slack channel that we have, Apache Pinot Slack channel, one of the most helpful open source database channels where everyone is actively involved. In fact, I can easily say that Kishore, who's the founder of the company, he's the person who's answering most questions in the channel. He still considers that to be one of the highest priority things that we have to do, is to make sure that when users are coming to the open source channel and asking for questions, that we are able to help them, right? So that's fundamental ethos of the company that has not changed. Obviously, as large enterprises are trying to adopt to this, there is a set of capabilities that enterprises are looking for, and that is where StarTree innovation happens. One of the things that we added to Pinot is tiered storage that is available in the StarTree product, where terabytes of data, not everything might be relevant immediately, right? So tiered storage is one capability that we added, where data can be tiered between local and object store, but still providing a single logical view, right? There is ton of innovation on the security and compliance capabilities that Pinot has, right? So that has been added to StarTree. right? That's another thing that we've done. And another capability that we've added that is available in StarTree is the ability to do joins. And this is something that I was really surprised about. Even in conversations yesterday, that Pinot has full-fledged support for joins, right? Now, not just any type of joins, we actually do multi-stage joins, which are on par with whatever you'd find in traditional OLTP type of databases, right? We are marching towards full SQL support and being able to do full-fledged joins at very high throughput, right? Obviously, Pinot latencies. When I say Pinot latencies, I'm talking tens of milliseconds, right? Not seconds, not minute. So joins is another thing that we are investing heavily in to make sure that enterprises can leverage that. Another big innovation that we have done that is available in StarTree is being able to mutate data, right? Traditionally, OLAP databases work on immutable data, right? You do not have the ability to update data or upsert data, so to speak. What Pinot has is we've added upsert capability in open source Pinot. Like I said, anything that we add major innovation goes back to open source. So we've added upsert, it's available in open source. What we have done with StarTree is we've increased the speed, performance, and operational ease of running upserts at scale, right? So we have some banks that run hundreds of nodes of StarTree clusters, and operating with upsert data is very hard without the capabilities that we've added. And these are things that we had to learn and adopt as our customers are demanding larger and larger scale and more complex workloads.
That's wonderful to hear, particularly this philosophy of giving back to the community, because we have also seen at Ashnik is that as long as the developers are comfortable, as long as they are happy with whatever technology they are working on, and they see that people are actually taking interest in the problem that they face in resolving those problems, it gives them the confidence to really go and pitch those solutions for critical environments. Because anytime anybody starts playing around, typically they start playing around for smaller problems, and when they actually go and want to solve problem at an enterprise scale for real business critical issues, they want to know that there are people who will support them, who will help them address those product capabilities. And that's a wonderful commitment to the community. So thank you for that. That's wonderful to hear.